Brother John has been speaking to us about the home, about family, about marriage, and I imagine he's going to continue that theme tonight. But I was thinking yesterday, the lessons that he was preaching just so timely, so needed in today's world. I was wishing that there was some way that we could connect this speaker to every smartphone in the United States or in the world, and those messages would come through and get to each and every person. But just so wonderful, so great, and much needed. And I'm not going to take any more of his time. Brother John.
As long as you want to brag, it's okay. I sure feel ashamed of you. Patty and I have only known this young man and his sweet wife for, a little over 24 hours, I guess now. And we are so impressed with him. If we could steal him, we would. But y'all whip me, and I'm too old to fight. So you'll have to keep him. Take good care of him. They are a precious family, and they will be precious in the Lord's work for many, many years to come. It's an old passage that was read for us a few moments ago, isn't it? I want to talk to you about how it relates to the family tonight. Eve was faced with a situation that is exactly the same as the one your family and you personally and I am faced with absolutely every day. In 1 John chapter 2, John now is an old man. This is written when all the other apostles probably have already been martyred. He is looking at the church after the day of Pentecost, and probably the first generation, many of them have passed, and now the second generation, ones who never saw Jesus, were not around to talk to someone who had witnessed the risen Lord. These folks he will call my little children. Literally in the original language is the idea of toddlers or preschoolers. That's how they look to this old John. And with the wisdom of age and love, like a father or a grandfather or almost a great-grandfather, he looks at tenderless with these young Christians. To him, they are young. And he writes in verse 15 of this second chapter, "Love not the world, or the things that are in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father isn't in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father. It is the world. But the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of God abides forever." One of the biggest problems we have in our marriages is our sinfulness. A few years ago, I heard a definition for the marriage that I really latched onto. What a marriage is two sinners trying to help each other please Jesus. Really, that's what the Christian life is about, and the church is a group of washed sinners trying to help each other please Jesus. That's what we're about. And that's what life is about. I told you yesterday of the burden I carried on my way to this meeting, after planning it for some time, a very dear, precious lady in my life, almost like a second mother, had just passed away, and I participated, easy for you to say, in her funeral Saturday before we came down Saturday evening for this meeting. She was my aunt. She was not quite 10 years older than me. She babysitted me when I was small. I knew her all my life. I sat on a piano stool when I must not have been, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9, along with my brother and some cousins that were there as the family gathered in her mom and dad's front room and saw her marry a young man that she had known all the way through school and had married when they graduated high school. This gentleman and she had a great deal to do with my preaching. I never planned to preach, I planned to farm. But there was a conspiracy against me on the part of my mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and my other grandmother, because my other grandfather was dead, and this dear couple, to bring this old country boy to Lipscomb and let him learn how to preach, because he'd been winning a bunch of speech contests. And my grandma talked me into, God gifted you and you need to use it for the Lord. And here I've been now for 56 years and I'm not backing down yet. I love the Lord. I love his church. Churches of Christ Disaster Relief Effort was a dream of mine and a prayer to God that we would start that. I could see that we were just missing the mark. We were holding meetings kind of like slopping hogs, expecting them to come, and they weren't coming. And I noticed when Jesus came to a town and nobody knew him, the first thing he did, he looked around and saw some hurts and he healed them. He looked around and found some needs and he filled them. And when the people figured out, this guy likes me, I'm going to see what's going on with him, he told them how to go to heaven. I noticed the early church, benevolence was very, very important in that church. And there are other people doing benevolence, but we were just kind of stumbling around that a little bit. And finally, when I came to Nashville, the Lord answered my prayer. I met some folks who kind of thought like I did. And so we started. Two of the original founders are living, me and one other gentleman. And we're the only ones left of the original crew. But God has continued to replace those leaders with more leaders, and the work has grown and flourished and blossomed, and churches have been helped all over the country. People have been affected all over the country. Here's what we do. Should, and I pray it never will happen, but should a storm or a flood or a fire or any kind of thing, even a man-made tragedy, if it makes national news, that falls within our guidelines that we can reach out to a local congregation and say, can we help you minister to your community in the name of Jesus? There's no charge. It's like the gospel, because other Christians have seen the need and already have supplied the supplies, and all you've got to do is unload the trucks, announce to people when things will be available, and pass them out. Get some paperwork on the folks so you can follow up on them when you have vacation Bible schools or gospel meetings or other efforts in the area. You can let them know about it, keep in touch with them, and many of those folks will find that God's people love them, and no telling how many folks will be in heaven because we showed them the love of God. One of my favorite stories, this happened several years ago now. There was a terrible ice storm in New York State. I mean, it was a historic ice storm. There had never been an ice storm this bad. There had never been one that lasted this long. And way out in the country, there was this 80-year-old lady who still lived alone. She'd lived there all her life, and she wasn't about to move to town. And she always was ready for those ice storms. She had supplies stacked up. She had food. She had everything she needed so she could live through the ice storm. But she never faced an ice storm this big that lasted this long. Well, the congregation there, I don't know whether they contacted us, because you can do that, or we contacted them. Right now, there are 4 men spread out across the country that work with us. They are our eyes and ears on the ground. We call them our directors of development. On Sundays, Wednesdays, whenever they can, they meet with elderships and churches, and they tell them what we do and what we can do for them. And when they're not doing that, when a storm hits, they're there, and they're the ones that helps that local congregation get set up and begin serving. And we've got years now, over 25 years of experience. We've made all the mistakes you can make, and we can show you how to do it right. But we don't control it. We don't control you. We don't bill you for anything. What we do is load up a semi-truckload and drive up to your door, and all you do is unload it and pass it out. There are food boxes prepared. One of them is out there, and we've emptied out all the cans so you wouldn't have that mess on the rug, and I wouldn't have so much weight to carry around. But you can see the kind of things we bring. We have enough in that box. The family of 4 can live on that for about 5 days. And if they don't have fire, there's things they can just open and eat like it is. But you'll see there's toothpaste and can openers and toilet paper and all kinds of things. Oh, besides that, there's a feminine hygiene box. If flood comes and takes away absolutely everything, there's some things that ladies need. They're in that box. There's a baby box. If you lost all your formula and you don't have any diapers, you can open that box. You can take care of your baby. There's wheelbarrows and buckets and brooms and mops and plastic tarps and blankets and all kinds of things that come. One semi will hold just under about $80,000 to $90,000 worth of goods if you went to Walmart and bought them. We buy them for a whole lot less because a lot of companies give us a whole lot of discounts. They know what they're doing, and they back up and they help us. And they get a tax write-off for that. But Jesus is glorified. And you give us $1 and we turn it into 3 in the relief field. You know why that is? No other organization does this. Red Cross can't do it because they pay their truck drivers, they pay their president, they pay everybody. We don't pay anybody. I've never drawn a dime from disaster relief in these 29 years. I've lost count of the years that I've been the president. Most folks, that'd be a whole lot of money laid down to them. A truck driver, I think we paid 1 truck driver in all these years. And when you go out, if you get one of those sheets, you'll just open that thing up and look at how many truckloads have already gone out this year. It's amazing. It's amazing. And people will volunteer their time to come and drive those trucks. I really feel sorry for the guys that go to California. That's at least a 10-day trip for them. We've had some drive all the way out there, all the way back, jump in another truck and go again. You know what? They said they feel the hand of God on them. They feel that they are the Lord's instrument of mercy and blessing. And they can go and show the love of God. Well, this lady I wanted to tell you about in New York State. We were helping a church up there. And this road was so iced into hers, there was no way she could get out. And so one day, as she told this story, she called the preacher and told him this story. Because when she got that box, she saw that we had asked the churches to put your own ID on the box so that people know how to contact you. In that box, there's a loving note from a Christian friend who, from Nashville. Ladies sit down and spend their time writing those notes, and there's a note in every box, the personal handwritten note, and there's a Bible in there. And it can show them the way to God. If they open the flyleaf, they're going to find the way of salvation and how to reach a preacher. And so anyway, she didn't believe in God. She didn't think anybody was up there. But you know what? She had run down to her last meal, and she now was getting really, 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 really hungry. She hadn't had anything now for a day or so. And so we, as the fire department there, helped them get those boxes out. And she told the story. She said, I was out of food, and I was so desperate. She says, I was down on my knees on the floor, and I was saying, I don't know if there's anybody up there or not, but I sure do need your help. I don't know how to talk to you, but I need your help. And she hadn't any more than said that, and there was a knock on her door. She goes and opens the door, and there's a big old burly fireman, and he's got one of our boxes in his hands, and he sets it down in front of her. When she sees what's in it, she goes to crying. She grabs that old fireman by the legs, and she thanks him and begs him and tells him how much she needed this, and she just asked God for it, and he walked in the door with it. And he didn't do anything but turn around, go out in the truck, get another box and set it on top of the first one. And then she opened that box and she found that letter and she saw that note about why this was there, because of the Church of Christ in the local town and the name of the preacher and the phone number. And she dials his number. And she tells him this story. And she said, Mister, she said, I don't know you. I don't know your church. I never read a Bible. But I prayed to somebody I didn't think was there, and he had somebody stand at the door with this box of food as soon as I prayed. I need a preacher. Is that a hard story to believe? It is for me. But those kind of things happen all the time. She died a Christian a few years ago. But God has just blessed this thing so many times. So many times at the board meetings, I'll say to the board members, I'll say, you know what, we're not smart enough to do this. God's doing this. He just keeps blessing it. And our job is to be faithful, and please don't mess it up. Just let us keep on doing what we're doing. When you do what God wants done, I'm going to tell you, He is going to supply the help you need. Now, I'm a preacher. That's all I am, and that's the most I'll ever be. I have trouble with my checkbook. But if you look on those sheets out there, there's millions of dollars that's got to be accounted for. God brings me people that can do that. I'm glad to do that. I can't even tell you all the rules and hoops you got to jump through to travel in all 48 states with semi-trucks. Every state has a different set of rules. You got to follow every one of them rules. Metro, I can't tell you all the rules Metro has, and I can't. But God brings me people who can do all that. He brings us all the truck drivers we need. He brings us a lot. Some of y'all have been down there when we load boxes. Sometimes you can't get on a parking lot for volunteers in there trying to help load those boxes. God just blessing it. And we want to be a blessing to you. If you ever need us, you contact us, please. That's what we're for. And if you'd like to help us, nothing means more to us than a regular monthly check, because that's how we pay the light bills. That's how we buy the stuff and keep it moving. When there's a big storm, we'll get a whole bunch of money pile in. Now, that don't help on that storm because we already got to react to that storm. But what it'll do is it'll let us refill the shelves. So we're ready when the next storm comes. That's the way that operates. But let's get back to what we want to talk about here. If you notice in the passage we read a little bit ago, no more had a family been formed in chapter 2 than the devil is assaulting it. The devil is assaulting our families in the church. I've been preaching for lots of years, and one of the biggest losses that I notice is divorce. Christians who stop trying to make their marriage work. For whatever reason, they stop. And you lose the whole family. You usually lose the whole family. I had a close relative one time that had a situation. He had a scriptural reason to get a divorce, and he asked me to think you ought to get one. I said, if you want to send your kids to hell. That's kind of harsh, but I'll tell you what, you run the statistics. You run it. See what you get. And you're going to find chances of suicide, chance of drug addiction, chance of juvenile delinquency, chance of divorce, the chance of being a dropout in school, chance of ending up in jail goes up at least 4 times if they don't have a mom and daddy in the home to raise those kids. That's just the way it turns out. The devil loves to hurt God, and nothing hurts him more than to hurt his children. And he's doing really well right now. A lot of us are older. Why do we need to learn about this? Well, number one, most of our marriages, in fact, according to some surveys that have been done, at least 95% of our marriages are not perfect yet. The other 5% lie. You know why? We're all sinners. And if I'm not perfect with Jesus, I'm not perfect as a husband. My wife could list you some of my shortcomings, but she's too sweet to do that. Your wife could list yours too, guys. I dare you to ask her. Girls, he doesn't have the nerve to tell you yours, but he knows so. We all can grow. And every year, my wife and I, we try to work on our marriage, and we learn some new stuff every year, and I'll be sharing some of it with you tonight as we go along. But I was telling you about my aunt and about her dying. I was there when she began dating this young man. In fact, my uncle says that what went on the old porch swing, I would go around and I would listen in the bushes and I'd go report on him. And he said I'd lie. Can you believe that? And get him in trouble for things. You can tell I'm way too sweet a person to do that, but he has this misconception. And so I remember one day when my grandma and grandpa said to her, young lady, you will not marry that man with our blessing unless he's a Christian first. I thought grandma and grandpa was pretty mean. You know what I'm going to tell you? Why in the world do you want to marry somebody who doesn't even know the rules or try to go by the rules to have a godly Christian marriage? Why would you want to do that under any circumstance? Don't you know that your soul and your children's soul and your grandchildren's soul hang in the balance? Well, later on, they got married. First, there was some talk about his becoming a Christian, and I remember the day that he obeyed the gospel. I saw my grandfather baptize him. And then there was the wedding. I was telling you about that a moment ago. And then I was one day with my grandmother and my aunt, and they were making a bed together. I was just a kid, not just hanging around, not really. And I heard my grandma say one of the meanest things I ever heard. She said, young lady, once you marry Sam, you are not welcome back in this house without him. Boy, grandma's mean, isn't she? She meant for them to work it out, didn't she? Okay, I told you about the hard funeral I had the other day. One of the things that my uncle requested of me, and I wouldn't turn down any request he ever made of me, because I'm a lot of what I am because of his mentoring and training and correcting and disciplining during my early college years. He asked me to read a letter that he had written to his wife on their 65th anniversary. Now, this is after she had already been diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, and they knew the end was not far away. Dear Norma, on this, our 65th wedding anniversary, I wish to express to you how much I love you. Words cannot adequately express my thoughts, nor am I really able to show you, but you are my life, a blessing beyond measure. I love you, with a big exclamation point at the end, large caps, and as bold as you can print them. Since our first date and through all these intervening years, every good thing that has ever happened has been because of you and through the providence of God. It was you who led me to Christ. Thus you brought God into my life as he had been in yours. The three most important days in my life were the day I entered Mrs. Skaggs' Latin class and met you, the day that I was baptized, and the day we married. From our time in that class, I came to admire you. I was struck by your intelligence, and as I came to know you better, I found that you were the most wholesome, the finest, the nicest person I'd ever met, and that your faith was much of the reason. Soon I knew that you were the person with whom I wanted to spend my life. You would make ours a pleasant home, and you'd make me a better man. These many years later, our home has always been a wonderful refuge, and you are still the most wholesome, the finest, the nicest, and the most Christ-like person I've ever met. The Lord has truly blessed us in our having so many years together. Through these years, we faced many decisions, and through the grace of God, they turned out to be those that led us to a pleasant and secure old age. Many of the most important crossroads of our life, though, came through coincidences, circumstances thrust upon us, which, as we can see now, were by the providence of God. We can look back to the lean years, when I could put only $1 worth of gas in the old Ford, and you uncertain if you could come up with food for the next day, but you always managed. You took a job which made things better for us, even to our being able to buy our first house and send our daughter Diana to college. We have had so many happy times in simply doing things together. In earlier times, with Diana, and then later, just the two of us. I often think of those many places that we've been in our travels. Of course, our work in the Lord's church has meant much with you teaching and directing inner city ministry Bible classes in our church for the inner city children, as well as your help to me in supporting me during the years of my eldership. Our shared interest in history has given us much enjoyment throughout the 65 years, but especially in our retirement years. But things have changed. The past few weeks have given us a different perspective. We now realize just how much each moment that we have together now means. Each word spoken, each hug, each touch is precious. With all my love, Sam. Now that's what I want my marriage to be. And that's what I want your marriage to be. That doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen by coincidence. It happens by two people trying to help each other please Jesus. Adam and Eve have no idea about what's to hit them. There they are in that beautiful garden. There they are with everything perfect and right at the end of chapter 2. And lo and behold, in chapter 3, trouble walks in the door. And at first it doesn't even appear to be trouble. I'm going to tell you, if any snake comes up and talks to my wife, she is going to be screeching and running and throwing things and saying, John, help me. The kids make fun of her. If she sees a worm, John, come help me. Eve didn't have enough sense but to talk to that snake. Is that not amazing? She just was taken in completely. Well, what does he say? He comes up to the woman and he asks the woman, can you eat of every tree in the garden? As if he didn't know. And of course, she just tells him, well, we can eat all of them except the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. And if we eat of that, we'll die. If we even touch it, we'll die. Well, God didn't say that part, but she did. She added that on. But he said, you'll not die. In fact, God knows that the day you eat of it, you will become like God. In other words, God is keeping something good from you. You thought God was good, but God's bad. I'm good. You will not die. In fact, you will be like God. He's keeping something back from you. I've had young folks tell me, well, I want to be a Christian someday, but I want to have fun first. Eve wanted to have a little fun. He's the father of liars, Jesus says. It's all a lie. Anything Satan puts out there is a lie. James talks about this. He says, when a man's tempted, don't let him say he's being tempted of God. You know why? God can't tempt anybody. Because he's not tempted of either, and he will not tempt anybody. But A human being, a man, mankind, is tempted when he's drawn away by his own lusts and enticed. That word, enticed, was used in their time to describe a fishing lure. We got any fishermen? We know. Yeah, Ben, you're a fisherman, aren't you? We noticed this morning, rather late. We slept in. We were bored, dead, plumb out. Y'all just worked us to death yesterday, after we'd already worked to death the day before. But anyway, we were just, and so we some of the last ones out there getting breakfast in the morning just before they put it up. And even after us, here came some fellas out of there, all dressed up. One of them all slick, and had that special hat on, you know. And here comes his. He'd been a caddy if they're playing golf, but he's got fishing poles, big old long fishing poles, special covers. Wouldn't even leave in the truck overnight. No telling what they're worth. Big old boat sitting out there, and I know he's one of these sport fishermen pros, you know, heading out to the lake. Well, they've got special lures. They want the ones that makes that big old bass just know the best meal he ever had is going through the water right in front of him. That's what the devil's doing to Eve. That's what he does to you and to your family and to your children every single day. You only need to grab once, but it's a mouthful of hooks and there's no getting off. At least if you get off, somehow, some way, you must have heard about what was going to happen next. Jesus had to go to the cross to get you off. Well, Eve just goes along with Satan and said, there's She looks this thing over. It's interesting. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, they're all in this. She sees the fruit. There's the eyes, isn't it? And she sees it's good for food. There's the taste. There's the lust of the flesh. Flesh loves good food, along with a lot of other good things. And it'll make me wise. There's your pride. See, John had it right. He's always right. It's always through one of those avenues it comes. And she makes a decision. She says, you know what? I know better what's good for me than God does. I think the devil's right. So she gets her one. Chomp. And then there's a strange phrase in the New Americans, or the New King James. It says, and gave it to her husband, to Adam, who was with her. Adam, where have you been? With her? You let this snake come up here and talk to your wife, and you didn't intervene. You didn't say, sweetheart, let's talk about this a little bit now. God made us, and he gave us all this. There's only one thing he told us not to do. You really think we ought to do that one? Where are you, Adam? I know Adam's going to blame her completely, but I'm going to tell you what, Adam's not innocent. Adam's not innocent. And I think one of the reasons, guys, we have such a hard time is because of what happened right here. What does he do? He falls right in line and does what she says. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't come out like the devil says. All of a sudden, their eyes are open and they begin realizing some things they think they better cover up. Sin makes you want to cover up, makes you want to hide. It's shameful. And so they make some fig leaves and put them on trying to hide. What are they hiding from? Who are they hiding from? You know, don't you? I've told you before the TV show we did for lots and lots of years, where we answered questions. I never will forget this one fellow. a question to come in about sin, and I don't know why I used this illustration. We did, and I've never forgotten it. He was talking about the foolishness of sinning when we know God's there. He said, can you imagine this drunk? And he gets him a bottle, and he puts it in a brown bag, and he wraps that bag tight around that bottle, and everybody sees what it is and knows what it is. He hadn't hit a thing. And then he goes in a back alley in a dark place, and he takes that bottle and he turns it up and looks God square in the eye. Well, then it says, in the cool of the day, they hear the Lord come walking in the garden. And so they hide. Never hidden from God before. That old song we sing about, I come to the garden alone, the dew's still on the roses, and he walks with me and talks with me. I always think that must have been a picture of Eden before the day Satan came. No more. They don't want to walk with God anymore. We're hiding. In marriages, there's a lot of things hiding. A lot of things that cause us trouble, we're hiding. Hiding from sins, hiding from hurts, maybe sins others have done for us. I know in our marriage, there was something hidden for 30 or 40 years. We didn't know it was there. My wife had been sexually abused quite young by a neighbor man, and your mind has a way of crystalling over that and hiding it so you don't have to deal with it. But underneath, it causes you problems that you don't even understand where they're coming from. And lots of times around age 40, those things come out. And all of a sudden, you're dealing with stuff that you didn't even know was a problem. Things hidden. There's probably things in your past right now you're hiding. You don't want anybody to know about them. And in marriage, those hidden things often are at the heart and the seat of problems that it's like an infection, a deep infection, and the pus comes oozing out. And what comes out is not the deep problem, but things related to it. Maybe uncontrollable anger. Maybe deep depression. Maybe an unwillingness to let the other person close to me or anybody close to me. Maybe it's a hard shell. But hiding is one of the big problems. And we have to bring those things out and work with them. That's what the great physician's about. That's what the cleansing is about. That's what the forgiveness is all about. To the Ephesian Christians, Paul writes about many despicable and sinful acts, and he says of them, and such were some of you, but you were washed. You were sanctified. You were justified. It was just as if it didn't happen. In our marriage now, it's just as if it didn't happen. With the help of God and with counselors, we work through it. And through our love and our forgiveness for one another, we can move on beyond it. And whatever problems you have in your life, listen, we are ministers of reconciliation. That's what Paul calls us. And we can be reconciled to God, and we can be reconciled to one another. For we all have sinned because of the same Satan, and we all can be forgiven because of the same Jesus. Whatever's wrong in your home can be fixed. As we dig a little deeper in this, we start seeing the things that come out because of sin in our lives and the lives of our families and family members. Sometimes, did you know most sins run in families generation after generation after generation? In my counseling training, one of the things that I learned about battered women or abused children is it runs in generations. An abuser will become an abuser. An abused will become an abuser. Hating it, not even wanting it, and not knowing why, not understanding why. If your dad was an alcoholic or your mom, the odds of you being very, very susceptible to alcoholism is almost 100%. And it's true with just so many different things like that. But we have the great physician and we can be healed. Isn't that wonderful? We can be healed. We can be forgiven. And we can forgive others. In fact, Paul would say, as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must do. It's not optional. It's part of the way of salvation. Look on down through here now. It says their eyes are all open and they know they're naked, and so they're hiding. They're full of shame. And then guilt, when we feel guilty, we hide from God. We hide from our family members. We don't want to let anybody know. And then it says, God calls out, Adam, where are you? Now, wait a minute. This is an all-seeing God. This is an omnipresent God. This is an all-powerful. Does he not see Adam? And the answer is yes, he does. He wants Adam to see Adam. He wants Adam to see what he's doing. He wants Adam to confess his sin, just like we have to do. Well, there's no hiding from God. It says on the day of judgment, men will cry for the rocks to fall on them and hide them, but they won't hide them. Every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. Won't that be someday? Won't be any atheists in hell. They'll know too late. There won't be any agnostics anymore. It's just too late. God's given us all the evidence we need to know he's there. Romans 1 is one of the most revealing passages about people who don't know God. It's suppressed knowledge. They don't want to know God. They don't want to have a judge. They don't want to have anybody making rules. They want to make the rules. So one young man told my wife a while back, I figured out I am God. Run. Lightning may strike. But that's what New Eastern religion teaches you. I am God. Yeah, okay. Well, Adam fesses up. Verse 10. So he said, I heard your voice in the garden and I was afraid. Sin brings fear. In fact, to the Christian, in Hebrews chapter 10, it says that if we go on sinning willfully after that we've received a knowledge of the truth, there waits for us a fearful reckoning, a fiery indignation, and judgment to come. I've talked to some folks who left the Lord and known that fearfulness. Adam's afraid. And in your marriage, there may be fear. You may be afraid someone will find out. And it may make you unwilling to talk, unwilling to open up. Sooner or later, that'll have to be dealt with. It says in Judgment Day, there won't be any secret things left. Now is the time to confess those things to God. Now is the time to make things right with your brother. Jesus says, and they run the Old Testament law at the time, and he says, if you're going to offer your gift to the altar and there remembers your brother has something against you, leave your gift, go be reconciled to your brother, and then come offer the gift. No use offering that gift until you get that worked out. So God says to him, who told you you were naked? Have you eaten of that fruit of the tree of not life, which or knowledge of good and evil, which I commanded you not to eat? Right away, Adam fesses up. Yes, Lord, I did. I know it was wrong. I'm sorry. I did wrong. Is that what he does? No. He turns and blames the woman. Well, this woman you gave to be with me. Notice who you're really blaming. You gave me this woman. That's what messed me up. You wouldn't know it. You wouldn't believe how many men think it's this woman that messed me up. I had one old retired coal miner. He and his wife have been fighting like cats and dogs, I guess, all their life. And anyway, they learned I was doing some counseling. In fact, their children obeyed the gospel and remembers there and talked them into coming. He comes in and he says to me, she's sitting in one chair, he's sitting in the other. And he points over at her and says, fix her. Come to find out he was the one that needed fixed more than her. Most everybody thinks their mate's crazy. You're not crazy. Most everybody thinks their mate's mean. Probably not. Probably not. Probably not. You just crowd crossways and neither of you is willing to give, and that's usually what's going on. I never saw anybody yet who said, let's get married and fight like cats and dogs and be miserable all the way till we die. Let's tear our lives up and tear the lives up of all of our children and destroy our lives at every funeral, every wedding, every holiday, every birthday for the rest of our lives. I was at a workshop some years ago with a fellow I respected, Ray Dunn, says the biggest problem with divorce is it don't work. People think it'll fix things and it just breaks things worse. It's like going from guerrilla warfare to atomic bombs. It doesn't fix stuff. It goes on and on and on and on. I had a wedding one time with 4 mothers of the bride. You believe that? 4 mothers? Listen, I just kept my head down. They divorced and she'd married and he'd married and remarried, and I don't quite yet know how we got 4 mothers, but there are 4 mothers this wedding. So he blames Eve. Instead of protecting Eve from Satan, he blames her to God. Listen, that guy's got a lot to learn. Boy, is Jesus going to straighten him out. Paul is going to lay him out about what his responsibility is to his wife. He's not going around blaming her for all his problems. The woman says, well, the serpent deceived me, and I did eat. Well, the Lord turns to that serpent, and he says, cursed are you more than all cattle, and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you will go, and you shall eat dust all the days of your life, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. Now, most of us understand that is a prophecy of the coming of Jesus and his death and resurrection. You shall bruise his head, but you shall bruise his heel, but he shall bruise your head. And to the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow. Ladies have a lot of sorrow in their life. We have a friend who sends us these humorous quotes all the time on the internet. And he sent us one the other day. He says, every woman has a major heartbreak and challenge in her life. If she didn't marry it, she bore it. I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception, and in pain you shall bring forth children. I was just a young preacher, and I was preaching on this, and there was old granny in the audience. This was out in the country up in Kentucky. And this old granny come in the audience, and she hadn't got any teeth. And I dare say she probably had some sniffs right here under the lip. I don't know for sure. But on the way out, after the service, she bragging on the preacher like you're supposed to do. You know you're supposed to do that, don't you? Anyway, on her way out, she comes up to me and she says, Sonny, they won't just cause you pain when you bear them. They'll cause you pain all your life. Any of you girls can amen that? Yeah, yeah. How long do we cause God pain? You ever think about that? Do you love God to even think about how much you hurt him? You know, I love my mama and I love my grandmas and I love my Aunt Norma enough. I didn't ever want to see a frown of disgust or shame or anger on their faces. It would just crush me to see that. It kept me straight. There was a young man going away to war in World War II. His mama told him as he left on the train, every night, son, I'm going to be praying for you. Later when he came back, he was still a godly man. He was still a faithful Christian, while many of his friends had destroyed their lives running around with prostitutes and carousing and drinking. But he was one of the few who stayed straight. Someone asked him, what did you do when you had time to go out and carouse like the other guys? He said, well, I got to admit, I was tempted to go, but I remember what my mama was doing that night. She was on her knees praying for me, and I just couldn't. Oh, girls, look at this next one. Listen. Listen, about 4 weeks ago, I came to understand this better than I ever have in all my life. Your desire shall be, the New King James says, for your husband. But now it has a footnote, verse 16. If you look in your footnote, if you have a study version like I do, it could literally be toward your husband. Your desire could be toward your husband. And if you're acquainted with the ESV version, the English Standard Version, it is a very accurate modern speech version that's come along in the last few years that's being highly respected even by Greek teachers at Freed Hardeman and other schools like that. And it's one always to be read and checked. It has a footnote in it that can be read. Your desire shall be against your husband. Now, when I went to reading all that, toward your husband, against your husband, for your husband, what is it saying in the original? So I dug up the little bit of Hebrew knowledge that I have, and I went back to some of the Hebrew scholars. And guess what I found? They said this word is very difficult to translate. Because literally in the original, the word he uses here for you is you're going to be diseased. And the disease is your desire for your husband. Oh, I wish I'd understood that when I was a husband in my 20s and 30s. I wish I'd have known that God had planted in my wife a need, a hunger for me that was insatiable and could not be controlled. She needs you, men. I thought my wife was just being difficult and contrary. You see, I was made of dirt outside the garden, and I got to learn all this stuff. I got to get domesticated, and I'll not get any of it naturally. I'm going to have to fight for every inch of it, just like I did for my education, just like I did for anything I've ever done that amounted to anything. I'm going to have to fight to be the man God wants me to be, and my wife needs. She needs me. She needs me every day. She needs me every hour. She needs to know my thoughts and my love and my concern are only hers. I didn't know that. I'm trying to do better. She's not crazy. God made her this way. God made her this way because that's what he wanted her to be. He didn't want her to ever go out and listen to the devil again. He wanted her to be someone that would be so loyal to you, so committed to you, she'd walk through fire for you. And my wife has. I don't know, Ben, whether you understand this right now or not. But a preacher, Richard Rogers was his name. You may have known that name, or you'll hear it or come across it. A great preacher. Richard Rogers had written an article on the preacher's wife. And one of the things that he said in that article was, when the preacher runs out of heart, she gives him hers. I've lived on my wife's heart for years. She's like that. She can't help it. God made her this way. And he gave me the responsibility to take care of that woman and to bless that woman. Not get mad at her or aggravated at her. Love her. Love her. She's worth it. I told my uncle last night, I called to check on him and see how his first Sunday went. He's a Bible teacher there. And he said he went well. He knows he did all that he could do for her. And their love was wonderful. Those people will heal better from a loss than someone who's had a bad life and a bad marriage and a bad relationship. Those are the ones that, they can't get over it. They can't get past it because you can't fit anymore. It's over. Oh, how it hurts. I've had a little of that. I told him there's something I didn't say at the funeral. I wanted to say it. I wanted to go to Proverbs 31. I wanted to work through those first few verses and those last verses, and I didn't get it done. Proverbs 31 talks about a virtuous woman who can find, for her price is far above rubies. That means she's priceless to you, men. She's priceless. She's priceless. Do you remember Abraham? Abraham wanted a wife for his son Isaac, and he was too old to go find one. He didn't want one of these local girls. He wanted somebody that would be the kind of woman Isaac would need all his life. And the best he knew was back in his home country, from among his own people. He didn't want one of these pagans for him. And he called his old servant. Said, I've got a job for you, and I want you to promise me you're going to do your dead level best to do this. I want you to go pick a wife for my son. How would you like for somebody else to come pick your wife? That's the way they did it then. And they had less divorce than we do, by the way. That old man would have more wisdom than some young kid. And he loaded up 10 camels worth of goods. And then it makes this statement. I don't know if you ever noticed this or not. It says that all that Abraham had was in his hands. You see, in those days, you paid dowries. You paid for your wife. I tried to get my girls to agree to make some boy pay for them, and they wouldn't do it. I could have retired for life. But he took everything he had. A good woman's worth everything you got. Her price is far above rubies. You know why? A virtuous woman, the heart of her husband does safely trust in her. Could my uncle trust in my aunt? You heard what he wrote. Listen to the next line. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. And then he goes telling all the things she'll do, all the ways she'll work. There isn't anything she won't do. Later on, it's going to say, and he will be known in the city gates. Now, that's where the leaders sit. He'll be a leader. My uncle was an elder in the Lord's church for 30 years. He only retired when Aunt Norma got to needing him. We often say, my better half, she is. We talked yesterday about how she's your helper, like God is your helper, not like Tonto is to Lone Ranger. Not a lesser helper, it's a more than helper. She's a gift from God. You better treat her that way. Or if we're lucky tomorrow, the Apostle Peter is going to tell you, if you don't, God's going to get you. He won't even hear your prayers if you mistreat his precious gift to you. Guys, I wish I had better news for us. Look what's happened to Adam in verse 17. Cursed is the ground for your sake. Paul will talk about how the creation groans, desiring for the resurrection. The whole world has been submitted to groaning because of our sin. Cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles shall bring forth for you. And you shall eat the herb of the field in the sweat of your face. You shall eat bread. He said, listen, Adam, I had you in a nice garden, and all in the world you had to do was dress and tend the garden. Somebody said the sin made the gardener a farmer. If you've done any farm work, you know what thorns and thistles about. Yesterday, Ben told me, said he'd started a garden. And I said, I want to go see it. And so I think Ben's going to have some goodies over there. You all may want to check it out here in just a few more weeks. And they're going to be corn. And you've got all kinds of things to enjoy. If you can kill the crabgrass. He did what I did. First church I moved at, I said, can I have a garden? They said, sure. So I plowed it up. Man, there's an old fellow lived right behind me, a gardener, you know. He says, man, you'll fight that crabgrass all summer. You know what this old man said to Ben? Man, you'll fight that crabgrass all summer. And I went over and I looked at it, and they were just laying there dead on top. I said, get your rake, Ben, and pull this stuff out of here. It's all going to root. And there was all little, he just tilled it just a couple of days before, and green sprigs already popping up everywhere. He said, boy, it's hard to hoe in there. I said, get that crab out of there, and it won't be near so hard to hoe. So he said he raked out a wheelbarrow load today. I said, well, next week, turn it again and rake it again. You'll get another wheelbarrow load. He will fight weeds all summer, won't he? He'll still get some fruit if he does that, but if he doesn't, I told him it'll turn green in 3 weeks. Am I right? I'm right. I'm right. Your marriage is like that. You're going to be fighting weeds in your marriage for the rest of your life. And you better get them when they're small. We start out with a lot of weed seed already in our garden. It's already there to prop up because it's in the community. It's in the culture of our time. And I don't know how much time I've got left. I can't see that clock. Terrible situation. But anyway, the culture expects you to fail. People say marriage is a 50-50 proposition. No, it's not. It's 110 plus 110. You got to give your absolute all. Nobody knows where the 50-50 line is. Each of you think it's somewhere that it's not. I've had folks say, well, God meant for me to be happy. No, he didn't. He meant for you to be faithful. Do you remember what he told Ananias to go and tell Saul? He's a chosen vessel for me. He will bear my gospel before Gentiles and kings, and I'll show him just how happy he'll be. No. It says, and I'll show him the many things he'll suffer. You're going to do some suffering. Ben's going to do some suffering out there in that garden, and you're going to do some suffering to get the weeds out of your marriage and to stay ahead of them. There's other things that'll enter in. Other projects, other people. A lot of times, mom and dad's part of the problem. Mom and dad don't know to get out of the way. Mom and daddy loves you so much, and they want to take such good care of you, and they see you starting having trouble. They see you start hurting. And they try to save you, and then they want you to listen to them and do what they tell you. You got to go establish your own marriage. My wife tells me about this. I forgot it. She said we were in real bad financial problems when we get started, and so she was going to go to her dad and ask him for some money. And I found out about it and I hit the ceiling. This is my marriage, this is my family, and we'll make it. And so she did. Smart girl, smart girl. You leave them, your family, and you cleave to your new mate. You can't do both. If you're hanging on to one, you'll not be hanging on to the other. There's going to be a lot of weeds. We'll talk about some of this as we pick it up next time. I hope I don't make it sound to you like marriage is going to be really, really, really hard without a reward. It'll be really, really hard with a wonderful reward. You can hear in what I read to you what a wonderful marriage these two people had. Your marriage can be like that, or better, if you work at it and trust God and lean on Him, ask His help. Seek older people who can help you, who've already been through the things you've been through. But the first thing you'll need to do is to be the kind of Christian you ought to be. If you've never obeyed the gospel, I would not want to go home without doing that. It's so simple. It is the best deal you'll ever get. Your past, with all your problems and all the things we were talking about you want to hide, that you're afraid of, you can take them to Jesus. He'll wash them all away with His blood. Plus, He'll help you every step of the way. Paul says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Our marriage is held together by Jesus. My life in His service is because of Him. I dare you to lean on Him. I dare you to trust Him. You go do what you ought to do and see how He fixes it. He'll take care of you all the way. He'll never leave you. If you've never been baptized for the forgiveness of your sins, that's exactly how He says you need to come into the Lord's church. You hear folks say other things. They can't find it in the Bible. I don't know where they're getting it from, but it's not in the Bible. The Bible says, he who believes and is baptized shall be saved. Now, if you haven't been baptized for the forgiveness of your sins, we want to encourage you to do that tonight. If you're one as a child of God and you need His help in your marriage or in your life in any way, as we said earlier, He's the great physician. Won't you come as together we stand to sing? It's a light that is drawn by you.